and let's get started. I will share my screen so y'all can see. Don't mind my tabs. I have tabs like crazy. All right, not if you all can see this fine. Okay, cool. I guess I should start up at the top, not the bottom. Also, computer's been really slow, so. All right, let's get started. If I miss anybody, that's either in the group chat, they're like, hey, I can't get in, like somebody just like let me know, but for the most part, we'll just get going. All right, so have you guys ever had a backache, like perhaps being in the car too long, you were traveling on a road trip, back was starting to hurt, maybe you felt it that day or maybe the next day. Maybe you had the chair reclined all the way back while you were traveling, your feet up on the dashboard, or you fell asleep with your head kinked like this. You woke up and you're like, holy shit, like, ow. Most likely you all have felt what bad posture feels like, if that was after a night's sleep, car ride, or maybe even after a training session that you had. Hopefully not. If so, hopefully you took some videos of it and sent it to me so I can look over that for a form review. But I've covered posture before in training, and that I'll probably keep on touching it a lot, but you know what bad posture is, and you know how bad it sucks and what it feels like. So what is bad posture? Just like how I mentioned, there's like no bad food, how I don't want you guys to associate, oh, Rice Krispie treats are bad foods. These are good foods. Like none of that. There's really not a bad posture either, unless it's a posture that you can't get out of. So if you can't move out of a posture, then yes, that's a bad posture for you. So what does that look like? So you see an elderly person walking around with their hunchbacks. They look like this, right? That is a bad posture, because do you think they can move out of that posture? No, they're kind of like stuck in that posture. They've probably been hanging out in a posture like that for quite some time. That's also led to some bone stiffness and no mobility there. So they really can't move out of it. If you don't have mobility, you can't move. I guess can't move through a range. Another example is, I'll use myself as an example of this, anterior pelvic tilt, limiting your squat depth. Having your hips facing anteriorly is not necessarily a bad posture, but if you can't move out of it and perform a functional squat, then it is. Myself, I work with this a lot because it can limit my squat depth. So I do a lot of work on my pelvic tilts, making sure I'm in a neutral pelvis. And I know you guys are working on that too. So just some terms I want to throw at you that you might not know the difference between, or maybe you do, whatever, but mobility is the ability to produce movement. So it's the ability to go through a certain range, the ability to do a squat. Stability is the ability to resist the undesired movement. So when I talk about stability for your workouts and all that stuff, I'm talking about your body's ability to like withstand a negative movement against gravity too, being able to have stability for any of the movements that we're doing. We were designed to move, and I'll just kind of throw some quotes at you here, but movement is the key to every facet of our health. You guys have all heard exercise is medicine. I've probably said it a million times. Exercise is medicine, and so is food. Food is thy medicine as well. So how does this apply to posture? So posture is, again, being able to move in and out of it. All right, set Kim, I'm trying to get in here. Can somebody let Kim in? Send her a link while I keep going. Posture isn't something that you try to hold with muscle effort. It is just something that should be. We are designed to move, yet most of us don't. So I'm going to pull a fact here. Most people on average are sitting around 7 to 7.7 hours a day. But I've also seen research that says anywhere from 10 to 15 hours a day. If you include drive time, if you include like work, if you have a sedentary work, and your time that you spend sitting down eating, and thereafter Netflix, Hulu, whatever you're doing, you're probably still sitting down. So average time spent sitting is actually quite a lot. And I've mentioned this before too, but the average steps that an average American gets a day is about 4,000 to 5,000 steps per day. And I've even seen like anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000. You might even have noticed this yourself before you started working with me, or when you're first just tracking your steps, that shit, you know, you didn't ever walk very much at all. So I have a couple of different people to let in here. All right, let them in. So just because we are sitting more, it doesn't mean like we can't help it that some of our jobs are sedentary. So how we can kind of use this to our advantage is improve how we're sitting, having better posture while we're sitting. So what I'm going to go over is sitting posture. So how should you be sitting? What is good sitting posture? What are bad sitting posture like strategies or things that you've done, or maybe you don't even notice that are bad postures? And also the effects of these sitting postures. Then I'll go over standing posture. And of course, I want to talk about breathing because that's like one of my favorite things. And I wish James was on here for this, but it gave us a good, I guess, a glimpse, maybe even I would say in depth of breathing. And I know some of you guys put that in your check-ins of, I've been really implementing the box breathing into my day or my evening, and that like works so much better. It helps me stress reduce. So I just muted some of you guys in case you're wondering. But box breathing, somebody else can go over that about it, but I talk about breathing a lot and how important it is. So what is the sitting posture? So this is, the two typical postures you will see, like how I mentioned when I started this. Maybe you were in a long car ride and you were all chilling and relaxing, had your feet up. Sitting in that slouch posture puts a lot of pressure here at your low back and therefore like up at your neck too. If you're trying to sit up in this posture, you're gonna have a hard time breathing when your chin is tucked this close to your chest. That's just one aspect. And this one is rounded forward. So there's a lot of arch here, which there is a natural curvature in our thoracic spine, but that's kind of excessively where we'll have our shoulders round forward. This is a good example of having a good upright posture, but I'll go into a little bit more detail about how that looks and how you can help create it. So the typical bad posture or faulty posture would be shoulders rounded forwards. Your trunk is essentially hunched forward too, because if we rounded our shoulders, we're now hunched here in the midsection, kind of closing off this area here, maybe even our chest, having a limited expandability of our chest cavity. So if we're shortening up here and we're rounded over, we're not going to breathe as well. So we can't expand our ribs or therefore even our stomach as we are breathing. And I call this the numbed butt. I totally made this up, but this is my theory behind it. If you're sitting on your butt for long periods of time and not moving, you're basically kind of giving your butt this cue of relax, relax, relax. So let me explain this. Say you get stung by a bee. Your immediate reaction is to cover that up. You're like, ow, ow, ow. We actually use our own hands and our body as comforting tools. So using our sensations, if we're trying to activate something, if we're trying to bring awareness to ourselves, we're going to be tapping it, right? We've talked about this with mind to muscle techniques. We're going to be tapping the muscle belly in order to create more attention to that area. When we're trying to calm an area down, if something hurts or is really painful, we apply pressure to it because that gives a neurofeedback of, hey, this hurts, I need to calm down. So that muscle tightness that you could be feeling, maybe you've ever felt this with a muscle trigger, like if your muscle belly is just bouncing like crazy, you hold like that twitch and it relaxes it. So if we're always sitting down on our butt, we're essentially giving that cue back to our bottom to relax. If we're continuously relaxing to our bottom, we're also losing that integrity of our muscle strength and our ability to contract that muscle. I think about this as, you look at somebody who has a job, maybe they're working this job for 30 years. You see them as they get up out of your chair and you notice like, this sounds so silly, but I see this all the time. Their butts are just flat, like they got nothing there. In my mind, I'm like, well, that's because they've been sitting on their ass all the time. Is that true to an extent? No, but if you actually put it in like scientific principles, like yes, if we don't use our glutes, if we're always giving it cues to relax, to slow down, don't contract, don't do anything, there's times that that's appropriate, and then prolonged sitting, it's not appropriate. We're losing that mind to muscle connection to our glutes, which is our main driver for every single movement we do, walking, going up steps, kind of telling it to shut off and like not be talking as much. So I guess that goes along the lines of if you use it, you lose it. But another bad thing in the sitting position too is if you are sitting, I guess it should be over here, like cross legs. You might notice that I used to cross my legs all the time in college. I started to develop like varicose veins or like spider veins that were very visible right at the spots where my legs would touch as they were crossed. This essentially is because of lack of blood flow. So when I have two body parts that are pressing together, even as my legs are crossed, I'm kind of telling this surface area to no more blood here. Like, what happens when you press on your hand for a while? It turns white. Why does it turn white? Because we kind of shut off that blood flow to that area. So same thing happens if you sit for extended periods of time crossing your legs. If you are going to cross your legs, try to cross at your ankles, because that's the least area of blood flow anyways, and it's furthest away from your body, rather than trying to cross your legs here, which most of us ladies do, right? Like, sit lady, like whatever to that. We're just gonna develop lack of blood flow to that area, so I'm not gonna be ladylike. Just kidding. But next point is having this slumped posture too also goes into returning to the womb. So think about what a baby looks like, or I guess a fetus in the womb. It is in that hunched circle like this. And most of you know what that position is like from maybe having a period that was super painful, you're cramped up. You probably laid in bed in that womb position. That's appropriate for when we're under periods of a lot of stress, or again, I guess I wouldn't say it's our uterus, but that area of our body was very uncomfortable and in pain. So we brought our body closer together to make that feel safe. But that same posture is what we see in the womb, where the fetus isn't really developed yet. And we are developed human beings. We have two legs, we stand upright. We shouldn't be rounded forwards. So more into the prolonged posture. Having this posture for an extended period of time kind of puts us into that emergency breathing. And we've talked about this in our office hours, maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, with breathing strategies, but we're not actually supposed to be breathing at all with our chest. And most people are chest breathers. When you're a chest breather, you're essentially telling your body that you're in a state of stress. So this could also be why it's called emergency breathing. You're in a state of stress, you're using these accessory muscles to actually have your ribs move up and down, rather than using your diaphragm, which is your primary driver for bringing in oxygen and supplying to the rest of the body. We're kind of not using that at all. So we're silencing our main source of breathing. Do I have to let somebody in? No, okay. So with that also, you have the crunch posture, right? We're kind of bent here at the trunk. We're closing off and, closing out our ability for our diaphragm to be working. So not only are now we inducing more of that stress breathing, which stress breathing is going to correlate to higher stress. Maybe your sleep starts to suck because you're stressed. You continues to breathe like that. And then you're getting a lack of oxygen intake too, and lack of your ability of your lungs to expand, because we're kind of close off the area. As we know, your diaphragm is very close related to your limbic system, and all of our lymph nodes that hold and fight cells and fight for our immunity that are killing all these toxins all the time. We're kind of putting that at a damper, so it's not like there's not more oxygen being brought to the area to help the lymph move through, so we continue to clean out our immune system or clean out our toxins. Essentially, if you're not breathing through your diaphragm, you're not really giving yourself a good opportunity to, honestly, I want to say thrive, because you're limiting your ability to even take in air. And with digestion, you can improve your digestion if you breathe into your diaphragm. All these really good things happen when you start to use your diaphragm. So if you're a little bit sleepy, groggy, perhaps you've been sitting too long, maybe it's time to stand up, or even just trick yourself into having more energy and just stand up taller. And I want to go into that a little bit more of standing up taller with a lack of confidence. You have probably seen this before. Say somebody just lost a game, right? Somebody's pretty emotional. They just lost a game. They're walking around. They're hunched over like this. They're upset. And you notice that and you recognize that as upset. Rather than somebody who won is standing up tall. They're jumping. They're yelling. They're excited. They're up tall. They kind of show off this confident posture. Same thing can be applied to you and your job as well. Maybe you could have more energy for your job, even if you are a sedentary job, which does suck. There are ways to improve it, like I said, by having better posture with sitting, but also this posture is just correlated to having more confidence. So maybe that's just making little tweaks in your interviewing. We're all interviewing mostly in a seated position, so having good confidence just sitting there might make you get a different position, or maybe it makes you have more attention and energy into your work that you're doing, rather than feeling like work is just piling on and on and on, even if it may, we can kind of trick ourselves to just having better posture and feeling better about what we're doing. A defeated posture, which is that rounded forward, will lead the body telling your mind that it's weak. It feels threatened and vulnerable. This will lead to a further lack of confidence and could potentially affect performance. And poor performance causes more lack of confidence and negative thinking and less disbelief in self. And that's kind of a continuous loop or feedback based off that slumped posture. And when I talk about performance, again, I want to relate it to, yeah, it could be sport performance. It could be your performance in the gym and your training, any athletic event, or like your work performance for your career, interviewing, things like that. Your body becomes stressed and you try to fight back, but the more you fight, the worse it seems to get until you feel frozen. Why does this happen? Because you're fighting physiology. And without a proper understanding of how physiology works, you cannot properly address it. And I kind of attached an article here for you guys. This is, I took a couple of bits out of it based off of that, but it's kind of talking about in sport and in performance, you know, what your mind and your posture have a link towards. With the confidence and what lack of confidence looks like. So that, I thought that was very interesting, and I wouldn't have normally thought about that if I didn't come across that article. And Dr. Tyler Detweiler is actually here in Columbus. He works out of Hybrid Performance. So if anybody's interested in him, he does chiropractic work. But anyways, oh yeah, I was saying that was interesting because I feel like people notice that, like you'll notice posture in somebody and be like, that person doesn't look very confident. Or you think of like nerds. Let's go back to the stereotype. Nerds, gamers, they kind of have that slouch posture, right? I even saw a couple articles on here call this the nerdy posture, which I'm not for calling it that. But you think about it, you're like, yeah, nerds don't have confidence. I don't know, whoever has thought that, right? You've thought it before. But you see somebody that's standing up tall, like the men that walk around like this or whatever, you see they have confidence just based off their posture. So what else does this affect? Compromised breathing, which I already talked about, promoting more of that stress breathing, and also fatigue. A bunch of muscles are working that shouldn't be working, and that's due to your faulty posture. That increases your energy expenditure, and you're able to conserve more energy and use it for more purposeful movements like training, like having energy for your day-to-day stuff without using useless energy on a bad or improper posture. So you can kind of conserve more energy by having more upright posture. Poor posture leads to a loss of balance, and this correlates and just kind of goes down the line of, with loss of balance, you have decreased coordination. With decreased coordination, you have less visual tracking, so that's that hand-eye coordination. And with that, you also have a loss of mobility. If your body doesn't feel safe where it's at, it doesn't really know where to go, it's losing the ability to go anywhere, you're not going to go anywhere. You'll also have a compromised range of motion. So I already kind of talked about that with the thoracic cage, with it being closed off, diaphragm's not able to expand, lungs aren't able to expand. And I don't really want to say that this is an issue, but if you are hunched over and say you do need to breathe through your chest at a more higher energy or higher intensity exercise, you're kind of blocking that off here with your chin in the way too. And then another example of this would be a hip flexion range of motion. If you sit for long periods of time, the front of your hips are going to be pretty stiff. And I don't know if you guys, I know you have felt this before, maybe in classes or after a long car ride. I felt it today just sitting down for even a couple hours. I stood up, and when I was walking around, I just kind of felt restriction on the front of my hip. That's from my pelvis being anteriorly rotated, and with those hip muscles, they're kind of shortened together. When we shorten a muscle, we lose the ability for it to kind of expand a little bit too. So this could be correlated into hip flexion with prolonged seating. And then with that, if we have a clogged up, crummy front of our hip, that also correlates to our digestion as well. Digestion is linked right around that area. So if that's crummy, it's going to kind of fall into other areas too. You'll have joint stiffness, and with that, a lack of muscle strength. Again, if you don't use it, you will lose it. And last but not least, here is the forward head. And this is becoming more and more prominent as the whole digital age has been rising. So our cell phones, I mean, think of when you guys are on your phones. And I don't even want to say you guys because it's me too. We're like this all the time. I'm always freaking on social media, and I always have to remind myself, like, get my head up. So our head weighs actually 12 pounds. 12 pounds for every inch that your head is moved forward. So if we're looking at these images here, it increases the force of the stress on your head and spine by 10 pounds. That's insane, which can lead to degeneration of your disc and your disc space, which is the little jelly-like substances between your bony prominences that make our spine move and feel good and feel, I don't want to say lucid because that's not the right word, fluidity. I guess fluidity would work. That is our disc space. It makes all the joints move at a good, feel good spot. When you have an impinged disc or degeneration of that, it's going to start to hurt. Your spine's going to start to hurt. Some of you might even have that already just with the activity that you did as a young kid. Gymnastics, this can do it to you. You can have like degeneration early on from that. I think, oh my gosh, where's she on here? Jess has, Ashley's waiting to come in. I know Jess has like scoliosis, and with scoliosis, essentially what we're looking at there is that is a fixed posture too. So in scoliosis, we're trying to like limit, like we're trying to move that the best that we can and allow the spine to feel comfortable and good to move through those ranges. But what else was, oh yeah. And if you also have like disc issues too, a lot of people who were lifting heavy weights early on in their life, I want to just point out teenage boys mostly. And I don't blame it. It's not all their fault. It's our school system that doesn't know anything about strength training, and they just push guys in football at like 15 years old to go for max weight, and they have no idea how to move. They have no idea what they can control their load. The coaches have no idea how to instruct, give cues on strength training. So we see a lot of young boys in football particularly like get this, and I only want to say football because I feel like that's when they mostly introduce strength training, and maybe that's just my school because we had limited amount of sports and that was a huge focus. So that's where like I feel like most boys were weightlifting, but they'll get herniated disc, and with that they have back problems at a very young age, and then they could potentially have some neuro damage by the disc space kind of pushing on their nerves, which is not fun for anybody. And I will say too, working in the clinic, when we were seeing young kids come in, we were already seeing them come in with this forward head, like right here. And that is all, I feel like it's a lot related to our early like onset of digital, like being on our cell phones, being down, looking at it all the time. We always make fun of our parents, like for having their phones like this. But I mean, honestly, like we probably should be using our phones like this to keep our head more upright and back. But I'll give you some exercises at the end of this on how we can, if you feel like you might already have this or you're kind of potentially getting there, we can do some exercises to help, I guess I'm going to say like, not prevent that. I guess, yeah, prevent it. If you go to a chiropractic office too, they will give you x-rays of your cervical spine and, you know, wherever you're probably being seen for. But I know when I worked at the chiropractic office, they did one just for like shits and giggles of my cervical spine. And I thought I had a pretty good like head to like neck alignment. And I guess mine was like straight up. They like made fun of me because like my neck was like a bamboo stalk. And you're supposed to have that natural curvature down here at the bottom. So they said that was a sign of like my head becoming forward because I was straightening out my cervical spine. And there's supposed to be a natural curve. But I feel fine. So let's go into sitting posture fixins. I hope you guys like this. It sounds really country. Fixins. So for your head, you want your eyes forward looking at eye level with the screen. So right now I'm at my standing desk, and I could probably raise my desk up a little bit because I do look down if I'm looking. I am looking down slightly, but you want your eyes forward looking at level with your screen. If you're sitting down, I said I'm standing, but this is for sitting or seated. Regardless, standing or sitting, you still want your eyes at level. When you're sitting down, having a chair with a headrest. So I don't know if you guys can see. Yeah, here's like my little chair, and I have a headrest here, and I can kind of rotate that and tilt it as I'm sitting. And you'll also notice too, this is curved to help promote that curvature at our neck. And then an important note here is your head position is determined by your eye position. I've said this to you guys before, I'm just gonna reiterate it again. Where your eyes go, your body follows. And that's with everything, every movement that you do, whether this is walking day to day, getting in your car, getting in and out of your car, going to the gym, all these things, like the movement you're trying to do, your eyes are like the key driver. Where your eyes go, your body follows. And with that, your head follows too. Shoulders, you want your shoulders to be relaxed, not tight up to your ears. So if I'm sitting down and my desk is up a little bit too high, look what I'm doing right here. So I'm adding more stress to my traps, which some of you guys might feel this if you work long hours. Could that also be stress from your job? Potentially, yeah. A lot of people carry stress right here in their traps. But is it also you stressed about what you're typing, stressed what you're working on? Or is it the positioning of your desk that's making you go like this and get your shoulders closer to your ears? Try to relax here and also here. So you're not so relaxed forward that you're reaching. We just want our shoulders to be relaxed. And then with that, have the space between our ear and the top of our shoulders. You might, after I mention this, you potentially will feel this the next day and notice that you're doing it without even thinking about it. And a lot of people do that because it is a natural tendency when we're stressed. And this also helps, or not helps, this correlates to that accessory breathing, where we're using these accessory muscles to do chest breathing, which we don't need to do. So if we have this stressed posture, we're going to start breathing through our chest as well. Arms not stretched too far forward. So I'm not, trying to type here on my keyboard with my shoulders, and I want to say like my scapula is rounded too much forward. Armrest on chair, you want to have armrest so you can have your elbows at a degree between 90 to 100. Something comfortable, right? You don't want to be too close where now you're shrugged up here, or too far away that you're stretching forwards. Back, you want it to be upright, but not too strict. Like you might see military, for example, they're like, oh, like attention, and they have like a super arched back, so they're trying to keep their chest upright as much. That's not the best posture. We have natural curvatures, so we have to work with our curvatures and help support them. So you want to be upright, but not too strict where you're arched in your low back to try to get your chest upright as possible. You don't want to lean back like you're riding the Catty. I don't know what I was thinking as I was typing this. I was thinking like, like the hip hop rappers are like, I think they rap about like leaning back in the Catty or something. You don't want to be like that in your chair for work. If you don't have a lumbar curvature in your chair, get a roll. It could be a small towel that you roll up and place at your low back to give you that support. This has been a huge game changer for people who have sedentary jobs that don't have ergonomic chairs or that don't have good seats for them. This is huge, and we saw this in the clinic, and most people do not know about this, and this literally saved their backs. They felt so much better. If your car seats don't have these either, which they should by now, like newer models, at least, I mean, my 07, which is, I feel like old now, but that at least has a button in there where I can inflate my lumbar curve or lumbar support even more to help that. And it is just a lifesaver. But if you don't have that, you can roll up a small towel and just place it at your low back. And I think I did a video in my Facebook group last June, and I can attach that on here too, where I went over like how to set these things up in your chair. So I can always attach that as well. Your hips, you want to be sitting all the way in the back of your chair, comfortable, so your feet can still remain flat on the floor. I don't want to say you don't want to be at the edge of your chair. That's not necessary. But I will say when you are reading or you're studying, you guys might have noticed this in college or whatever classes that you took, you sat more forward at the edge of your chair with things you're more interested in. So I feel like that's a hardwired psychology thing, that we're into it. We're actually on the edge of our chairs as we're very interested in what we are learning or listening to. But ideally, you want to be sitting back in your chair, your hips not forward, rotated, right? We don't be excessively rotated in our chair. We don't want our soup dumped, which I call this a soup dump. You don't want to be too far back that you have the frog butt, and you guys know what that looks like. If you even practice it yourself with like your hands on your hips, you can practice rolling. Oh, you can't see it still. You can practice like rolling your hips forward and backwards. And when you roll forwards, this is dumping your soup, and backwards, it's like that scrunchy butt or the frog butt. You want to be on your sitting bones. If you guys do yoga, they mention sitting bones a lot, and essentially those are your, technological term is your ischial tuberosities, but that's the very bottom of your pelvic bone where we just naturally sit. So make sure you're sitting on those sitting bones. For those, you might even be able to feel it if you kind of lift your butt up if your butt's in the way. But it's kind of right there, and you can feel it when you sit down that you're sitting right on that pelvis. Yeah, okay. So if you've ever sat on somebody's lap and they're like, oh, you have a bony butt, they're feeling that bone on their lap. And you want to have a 90-degree flexion at the hip. I would say around that range is pretty good. Like I said, feet flat on the floor. If you're short, you got to change your chair height so that this works for you. Not on your tiptoes. Chair at the back of your knee bend, but with some space in between so you're not cutting off the circulation to the back of your leg. Limit cross legs, cross the ankle if needed. And if you're sitting for periods of time too, I don't think it's a bad thing to kind of have like a footrest or a little stool where you can kick up your feet on. Not so that you lay back like that, but just give a little break from, I guess, your blood being like shunted this way. So if you think about it, if your feet are in this position, pretend these are your legs, they're kind of in this position, your blood's fighting against gravity the whole time. Even if it's just a small segment of your leg, your blood still has to work extra hard to fight gravity to come back up, and you can kind of give it periods of rest and help by elevating a little bit more. You'll hear this after injuries and things like that. Rest, ice, compression, elevate. Elevation helps your body just pull that blood through. And again, if we have our feet kind of in that down position for long periods of time, you can get blood pooling, or some women, even if they're pregnant, you'll notice they have blood pooling or swelling at the bottom of their feet. So it's really beneficial for them to keep their legs propped up, but not just pregnant women. If you're somebody that's on your feet a lot anyways, my restaurant workers, my servers, bartenders, factory workers that have to like walk the grounds, really cool and good for you to keep your feet up when you finally get to sit down. So you can kind of give your body some help and get off your feet a little bit. And some other modifications that you can do, sitting on a medicine ball or an unsupported chair so that your core musculature has to work. If it has to work, it becomes stronger. So I think the most like updated like ergonomic chairs and stuff like that, you can have backrest if you need to, but they also have like your seat be like that Bosu ball type of substance or material, so you can actually have to work, so your body has to work a little bit in order to maintain the upright posture. And with that, that's reflex that we are hardwired with when we were kids or whatever, to have natural reactions to that, and that does help your posture a lot too. So if you have that, that'd be super cool to have. But if not, there's some exercises you can do on a not a medicine ball, but an exercise ball or yoga ball where you can implement that as well. Another thing would be to implement a sit to standing desk. I just recently bought one. I'm in love with this. I can sit it down, like it moves down automatically. I don't know how you say that. I guess that's automatically. It moves down so I can sit down with it, and then I can also press it and it just kind of comes up. And it comes up at a lot of different ranges too, so I can have this go up even higher. I really love this, and it's beneficial, so I can go, like, it's not optimal to stand for 24/7, right? Like I just mentioned, if you're in a restaurant worker, you're on your feet all day, like that's not optimal either. Like I said, it makes it harder for your blood to return to your heart, more stress in your vascular system, decreased blood flow to your foot. All that's involved with standing too long too. So if you can go through increment periods of sit to standing, that's actually best. I would say best case scenario, you can do that. So what are the problems with standing postures? Like I said, standing excessively without breaks of sitting, your shoes. And I see this in teachers where they're standing up for all their lessons, but they're also wearing heels. I could go on and talk about heels at another time, but essentially heels are terrible for our feet. And if you're standing long periods of time in uncomfortable shoes, such as heels, that's a no-no. The surface that you're standing on, if you're on a hardwood floor, you will notice this if you've been standing for long periods of time on hard floor, it sucks, your feet hurt. So you will see, if you guys ever like look at restaurants or whatever, they have certain type of flooring back there that's a lot softer for the servers and bartenders, or the people working in the kitchen. Like they have this softer area to work on. Also helps prevent slips and falls, but for the people that are standing in one place all the time, it's really beneficial for them. And also, I'll just show you. Like when I was working in my kitchen, I didn't have this desk set up yet. I would be standing on the hardwood floor and my feet would be aching, like my heels, because I didn't want to be wearing tennis shoes. But I would have to, but my feet would still hurt. So if you do standing a lot, get yourself a mat. And I'll show you guys my mat in a little bit, but it just helps create some of that force through your feet with standing so long, because you're already putting all your weight through the floor. So it's like extra work on your body. And also the impact of standing for long periods of time is bad, but if you're standing for long periods of time with a faulty posture, also bad. So if you have a super arched low back and you're standing for periods, long extended periods like this, that's not good. This isn't good either. This isn't good. So standing for long periods of time in general is just not very great. If your screen's too low, say on your work screen, if it's too low or your desk is too low, you're looking down a lot as you're standing, or even potentially like standing on one leg too often. I don't know if you guys notice when you're standing up, do you shift your weight all to one leg? And then do you shift your weight back? Do you like give each time to one leg, or do you stand directly right upright like the whole time? No, I don't, and most people probably don't either. So if you are going to stand on one leg, I'll give some modifications to that too, but you want to be switching it up. So one hip isn't getting all of your whole freaking body weight load, and then you're never on the other one. You'll see compensations there sometimes too, with how people present in their running form, or even squat, things like that. We'll have a certain side that we favor too. And I liked this just as a little visual of kind of like the eye level to the screen that I was talking about, the angles here at the elbow, desk height, and all that stuff for sitting posture too. Sorry, this is running a little slow. So standing posture, how do we fix our standing posture to have better standing posture? Have periods of, okay, now it's gonna scroll too far. Come on. Have periods of sitting and standing. So for example, this is maybe 30 minutes, you're standing up, 10 minutes, you do a walk around. Maybe you're going to get more water, maybe you're going to the restroom, and then you have another 30 minutes of standing, or you do sitting. So 30, 10, 30, or maybe just do 30 and 30. Maybe you don't have that little break to walk around or whatever. You can just do 30 and 30, mix it up. I will say that is hard to do. And sometimes I end up going like standing from 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. and then I eat lunch and I realize, oh, I'm actually kind of tired. So then I'll sit down for like the next hour or two. Have intervals in between there where I get up and walk, but maybe that's just me where I'm like into something and I forget about everything else. But ideal, optimal would be just to interval between the two. Have a floor mat. So I was showing that. This has been a huge game changer. So it's just something super, like not super thin, but it's cushioned so that I feel just a lot more comfortable when I'm standing. I can stand on it with shoes. I can stand on it barefoot. Kind of like a more bang for my buck if I'm barefoot is it is a little bit squishy. So I'm also getting some feedback through my feet to help improve my balance, improve my proprioception, because understand the more that you give your body cues to pay attention to and to work and balance against, it's going to improve your strength and response too. Think about when you touch a hot plate, you react immediately. Think about when you're playing in the sand, if that's at a beach or whatever, your ankles are having to work a little bit harder because it's on an uneven surface, which is a good thing sometimes. Have a foot block. So let me find where my foot block is. It's clearly not where my feet are, but wherever it went, I have a yoga block. I really don't know where it went. And I just use that as my little stool for like propping my foot up. So as you see in this image here, he has a little footrest. I put my foot on a yoga block because, like I said, I do shift my weight from one side to the other. So if I'm going to be standing on one leg anyways, I might as well help like support it and kind of counteract a little bit by having my foot propped up. And this helps like a little bit of help with more of that return to blood flow, helping your cardiovascular system a little bit to get blood back up to your heart, to be pumped up through the rest of your body. You get more oxygen, better exchange rate, better breathing, good stuff. Proper footwear, again, being on a foam mat, but don't wear high heels if you're going to be standing for long periods of time. Get comfortable footwear, barefoot, especially if you're standing on a foam mat or something like that. neutral head, eye gaze, hips. I would say this is still a little bit low. As you can see, like he's still looking down the screen in this way. So to have that raised up a little bit more would be better. So let's go on to breathing. So this was something cool, and I want to show you the book that I'm getting a lot of this information out of. It's called Pressing Reset, and it's how we are, like, how we develop as children to learn from our environment. And basically, as children, we learn from our feedback. For those of you that have kids that's already had kids, or they're growing up right now, you notice the process of how they learn to stand up and walk upright. They go from rolling around, like on their backs to their sides. They're figuring out their environment. They're using their neurological reflexes to understand the environment and grow from it, so they can get to a point where they're standing and they have the balance. So everything is based off our mind, like everything. Our mind is so freaking amazing. But all this happens with what the baby is perceiving as these neural reflexes, just growing and growing and making these connections that develop more and tighter. So they go from like being on their backs, rolling around, getting control of their neck and their head, lifting their head up, getting the strength. So when they're doing that tummy time, really what they're doing is developing their neck strength so that they can be able to support their own head. You see when they don't, right, their head falls. They get to a certain range where they're sitting, they can't support their head. That's why we have to comfort their head so much, because they don't have that strength built up yet. So more on breathing. I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but placing the tongue on the roof of your mouth encourages nasal breathing. And nasal breathing is what brings us to diaphragmatic breathing. That's breathing with our diaphragm here, like right at our belly. So if you think of where your belly button is and you place your hand right here, that's where your diaphragm is. If you find your lungs or your rib cage, I guess your rib cage, yeah. So if you suck in and you put your hands under, you can find your rib cage. Your diaphragm sits like right here, which is why it has a big connection with gut and improving digestion. But if you're breathing through our nose, and James did a great job at talking about this a couple of weeks ago when he came in as a guest speaker, of how day to day, like our low intensity activities, we should be nasal breathing. If we are doing a higher intensity, we should be breathing in through our nose, out through our mouth, and at the highest intensity that we could be doing something, sprinting, etc., we'll be breathing in and out through our mouth, which is like least optimal. And he said that like the best benefits for health and longevity was breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. So I've always been a big nasal breather, but I really focus every time I walk on, I'm going to try to breathe in and out through my nose the whole time. Most of the time I do it without thinking now. So I tested this when I was in Arizona. I went hiking. As you know, like when you're going uphill, or up mountains, it's not a hill, actually, that's a more intensity. So that requires more oxygen. And given like the climate that you're in, your oxygen levels are different there too. But I still tried to breathe in and out through my nose as much as I could. And I made that a challenge for me. And because I did that, I can guarantee you I had so much benefit cardiovascular wise, being able to perform with less oxygen and get up that mountain. That's why you see spring training happen in areas where the climate is different, where they have less oxygen available, because they get adapted to having less oxygen. So when they do have a lot, they can perform way better because they've been used to having not much oxygen, that they develop their system to be, I guess, physiologically like advanced. They sometimes consider that cheating when people are training in those higher climate areas, but super beneficial. So anyways, if you place your tongue on the roof of your mouth, and if you swallow, to try to figure out where that position is, if you swallow, your tongue will naturally go there, and that's going to help you get into more of that nasal breathing. We are naturally designed to breathe through our nose. It is also our humidifier. So the more we breathe in and out through our nose, we humidify the air. There are some restrictions with this. If you have a deviated septum, maybe somebody busted your nose and you have a broken nose, or I don't know, maybe you have a bunch of boogers. Let's clean those out. Let's fix some of those restrictions. Nothing wrong with picking your nose or even using Q-tips to swipe them out. I had to use Q-tips when I had those long fake nails, which I talked to Shelby about that today, like how awful they were. But could not pick my nose, and even if I tried, I was going to end up with a bloody nose because I had no like perception or strength of how tough my nail was. But anyways, in theory, the more nasal breathing that you do, it makes you stronger. It creates more intra-abdominal pressure between our diaphragm and pelvic floor and gives us that muscle girdle. So for those that, especially us women, we need to be having a lot more pelvic floor work because a lot of us don't have good pelvic floor, especially after having children. That requires a lot more work as well. So exercises that we can do to improve our posture, already talked about it, big about this, breathing, nasal breathing, even doing that box breathing, which is really beneficial in stress reduction as well. But James mentioned box breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, that's breathing through your belly and then out through your belly. And then I even like to venture into 360. So he talked about breaking it up into different segments. You can breathe in and out through your belly, then go to your sides, and then think of like breathing into your back. You can also do other strategies like breathing, like I'm going to try to do this while talking, but like closing off one side of your nostril and breathing into one nostril and out one nostril, or you could breathe in one nostril and out the other. Different strategies you can do there. And that's really good for getting into more of that parasympathetic state too, reducing stress. So maybe before you eat a meal, because we know for resting and in a good non-stress environment, we're going to better absorb the food that we're eating. It's going to be digested better. If you're stressed out when you're trying to eat a meal, it's not going to be the best option for you. So maybe take some super enzymes with it or something, or try to get yourself into a parasympathetic state going into that meal. That's why they say don't like take calls during dinner, like don't have your phone with you at dinner too. It's a distraction, but it's also like, yeah, like our phones are pretty stressful. The things that pop up, emails come through, those are potential triggers, and just trying to alleviate that. Chin tucks. You can do this in your car, which I love to do, or whatever chair you're sitting in that has kind of a headrest. So chin tucks are essentially, and I like to use my finger on my chin to like help guide my chin back. It's not the prettiest, so if you think you want to like look pretty while doing this, like forget that. But essentially, you're kind of working to create strength in the back of your neck to pull your head back. So if we are developing that forward head, you can do chin tucks, where I'm just going to use my finger to like help give my body cues to guide it back. You're going to push your chin back as like making a double chin, and you can hold that there. And if you have the headrest from a car, you can literally push your head into the back of that headrest and hold it 5 to 10 seconds, and then really protrude forward. So you're getting like the range of motion there, but you're holding more of that contraction into the headrest, or you could use your own hand, I guess, as like cues to push into, or some resistance, pushing your neck into that. But I like to use my finger here to like help remind and guide my chin to go straight back. And it's not tucking it like this, because that's still like not appropriate. You're kind of just closing off your throat there. Just think of it as moving your head directly back rather than tucking your chin. Even though they're called chin tucks, you don't actually tuck your chin. So that one's fun to do. So if you're on like long road trips and things like that, or even if I'm just driving, I just like to do it because there's no other time I really think about it. And whenever I'm driving, I tend to think about everything. So I don't know if that's you guys, but it's like my mind just like opens up as I'm driving. So hold anywhere from 5 to 8 seconds. You can even do longer, challenge yourself the longer you hold that. That's awesome. That's an isometric workout too. Really helps strengthen the back of that neck there to keep the head from pushing forwards, but good one too. You can also face the wall. Oh my God, I choked on my words. You can even face the wall, and you can get a sort of like tennis ball and push into the tennis ball as some sort of resistance. Just as long as you're not like banging your head to the back of the wall. Head nods. I dropped a bunch, so you guys are going to get this in a shared Google folder, but I dropped a bunch of these videos to help do this. Head nods, you can unlock it says sticky thoracic spine, and I typed that, but if you just feel like you're a little bit stiff in your thoracic spine, which is like midsection, it can help unlock that. Hips that feel really tight, and even help your ankles. You can help your body's immune system, digestive, cardiovascular, and respiratory systems by doing these head nods. So like I mentioned, how your body follows your eyes, and children, as they are learning to grow into our environment, learning all the, networks of their neurological system to be able to be upright, they do a lot of work with their head control. So I'll just pull up one of these as an example for you to see. And these are examples from the book too of how to do some of the exercises. Fast forward. So this is really good because how often do you actually put focus and attention on turning your head left and right? You don't do it until your neck feels tight, right? I found myself doing it today when my traps were a little bit tight. I didn't really even think about doing this until I felt it was tight, but these are things that we can do to, help loosen that up as if they are tight, and also prevent any tightness from occurring. So it's kind of like a twofold. It can be beneficial, but you can also, remember how I said that your hands are calming. So if you touch an area, if you feel like your traps are very tight and very like nagging, put your hand there, kind of use that as like calm down traps, and then you can look left and right, and you'll feel, if you are tight, you can sometimes feel that muscle kick on also as you're turning your head too. But I like to do this when you kind of just put your hands across here and do it that way. And then hopefully he shows these in like hands and knees. I might have that in another one since this is just supine, but you can be on your hands and knees and just turning left and right, which is super good. I don't know if anybody's done that in yoga class. Gosh, when we do that in yoga class, it just feels so good. But there's a couple other examples there. Let's see what these other, I'm not gonna watch them, but I wonder if I can pull it up. Okay, yeah, so this is doing more head nods sitting, and what's this one? And also too, that's similar, like long sitting one. Once you look at a couple of these, there should be like suggestions pulled up, and they can be similar ones there too. Rolling and rocking. So this is the motion and position that reflexively sets a person's posture. So that's kind of exactly what we're trying to do. This is going back to our roots. I want to say back to roots, but this is back to being babies. Essentially, that's what we're trying to do, because we were perfect. We were perfect as we were infants or children. When we learned our environment, we first started working, before we got exposure to any long chronic postures that we've done, any sports that could have compromised our performance now, or how our body is aligned and set up. We were perfect then. So we're trying to get back to how we were as children before we got all this length of time on us, all this gravity that we've been fighting day to day that could be weighing on our posture too. So I do like to talk a lot about like going back to play as kids too, because we forget that. We get so stuck in this adulthood, we forget to go back to what we were as children. We were learning the environment. We were basically priming our neurological system. We have to go back to that. So here's a couple examples of that too, of some rolling and rocking examples. This is a quadruped, and I like this one for a warm-up too. If you're doing a leg day, this one's good for the adductors if they're pretty tight, so that inside of your thigh. I like this one for that, but like I said, see here. What a nice ad. Come on. I don't want to watch all this. Okay, here we go. Halfway through it, he finally gets to it. This is super good. Like, warm up, I love it. Like, think of this here too, it is adductors. He's kind of stretching them if you feel like those are tight for you. So you guys can like take your time watching these. I just want to at least show you the different positions you can be in for that too. Pelvic tilts, so sitting on a ball, or even as you're sitting in your chair, just feeling what your hips feel like moving forward and backwards. Some of you might not even know what an anterior pelvic tilt is. Put your hands on your hips, sit in your chair, and literally do Shakira hips, like moving them forwards, tucking them under, making that frog butt. Understand what neutral is. You can feel what too much forward feels like. I get a pinch in my low back, and I feel kind of where my neutral is, and I feel it's too far back where I feel like I have to literally scrunch my butt in order to get it further down. So you can kind of feel it in between those areas and know like your pelvic position for that. Super good too. And then sitting on a ball, like I mentioned earlier, that kind of helps your vestibular system, neurological system perceive that, hey, like we could be working on stability here because we don't have stability from a chair. Butt squeezes, I love to do these all the time. I even do these laying in bed. Um, again, it goes back to that idea that I have of like sitting on your butt and not giving it cues is going to flatten it or just make it less responsive. So if you are sitting in a chair for long periods of time, just literally do 10 to 15, 3 sets of 10 to 15 butt squeezes. You'll feel a huge difference. And I think that that helps kind of release that, or not release, but kind of gives more of that cue of like, hey, our butts aren't dead. Like we don't have a numb butt. I'm going to, you know, squeeze and bring some more blood flow to that area too. It's going to do that because if you're having muscles contract, what's that do? That draws more blood to the area. So we did these a lot in therapy for patients that were basically bedridden, or maybe they can't even get up and walk. So the first movement that we do, the first area of strength that we try to achieve, since they can't walk, they can't get out of bed, is how can we get their glutes strong? Because that is the one primary driver for any and all movements. For them to be able to roll over in this bed, they have to have glute strength, is we would have them do butt squeezes. So you think I'm like joking about how these are stupid? Like they are so important. Car rides, things like that, just squeeze them. And when I'm laying in bed for too long, like say if I'm watching TV laying in bed or whatever, I don't actually have a TV in bed anymore, but if I did, I would be doing butt squeezes because I get to a certain point where I feel, I'm like, oh, I just need to move my butt. You can also do hip bridges if you're laying in bed or laying down somewhere, I don't know. Shoulder rotations while sitting or standing, that's maybe rotating and excessively overdo it, like really exaggerate it. Do 10 to 12 each directions going backwards, and then you can do it going forwards. But place more of a focus. So if you start, I would do more on your back than forwards, because we want to prevent that forward posture, right? If we're already like naturally coming forwards anyways, we need to put more of a focus on our posterior body and get that stronger. So if you're going to do 3 sets of that, say that's all the time that you have, or maybe even just 1 set, just think of doing more of rolling backwards and having those muscles on the back of your body squeezing and working more, building up strength there. Seated marches. So if you're sitting in your chair, got a little break for work, just lifting your knees up and down. I kind of just do that as just I have a really bad time of just sitting still, but I like to do that too, to also make my legs move, get the blood flow going. Since I am sitting down, blood could be at the bottom of my feet. I'm just going to kind of move them and work them. Seated leg extensions, if I feel like I'm getting a little bit too stiff because your knees have been bent for a while sitting in a chair, I'll just do a little bit of leg extensions, just kicking them out, kind of feeling more like a stretch in my hamstrings. Essentially, when you're sitting down, you're kind of shortening your hamstrings. They're attached across 2 joints. So they are up at your hip, and they are also attached right below your knee. So if your knee is bent, that's also shortening that muscle. So it's kind of shortened at that lower range or the lower end of the muscle. So I'll just do some leg extensions to kind of loosen up my hamstrings from being tight from long car rides or whatever, or just helping stretch out my calf. Take walks, breaking. So break up your sitting or standing by going for a little walk, whether that is, your lunch break walk, or that's just going to the bathroom, that's taking a little bit of lap around wherever you're at, going to get water, fill up your water, whatever that is, just take a little break to get up out of your chair. If you have a sedentary job, this is super important that you try to get up. I would say at most every hour, try to get up and do a little bit of a walk around somewhere if you can. Highly encourage it. Just to sit down for that long of time without any break is awful. You can do chair dips. So if you use those armrests, do some like chair dips if you can. I was just, thinking of these things that we do for therapy as well. But if you're sitting for long periods of time, maybe you're in a seminar, whatever it is, something for the whole weekend, and you got some armrests just to get your body moving a little bit. Do some chair dips. Standing heel raises, I'll do these while I'm working. It's mixing up something, also getting some strengthening while I'm standing up and getting more blood flow to the bottom of my feet. As I said, if we're standing for long periods of time, that's a lot that our body has to work on bringing the blood back. So if you can use some muscles and activate, I hate saying activate, but if you can use some muscles and get them working, that's gonna pump more blood. And your blood is circulated through 2 different mechanisms, by breathing and by muscle movement. So that is the only way lymphatic fluid gets moved around, and your blood in general. Ankle pumps, same thing. If you're bedridden, we have people do ankle pumps just to decrease blood clots, because Again, if they're not able to move and we're not moving much, we got to get those ankles pumping to return that blood back to our body or back to our heart, improve our breathing. This is super huge. Cat cow. This is just some other yoga poses too, but this is more for, you know, stretching out that back and opening up the chest. Super good for your hips and pelvic area as well. I think most of you know what that one is. Chest openers. So this is maybe laying down on a foam roll. So you have the foam roll in line with your spine and you just lay there with your arms open like this. You're going to feel a stretch here on your chest. If we are so rounded forwards, guess what's also shortened too? Maybe even training a lot of chest lately as well, and you kind of feel this even more important to try to do some chest opening things. And with that, again, like I said, working out the back of your body. If we are working the muscles in the back of our body, that's going to slowly pull and stretch out our chest as well. Take breaks every 20 minutes or 1 hour, whether that's sitting or standing. Take time away from screens. That's kind of a big one, but it is important too to help with posture. If we can alleviate screen time, that we're down here like this or on our laptops, whatever, the more we can decrease that and get it in better position or just get rid of it in general, we can improve our sleep with this as well. Elevates your feet when sitting for long periods of time or even sitting. So if you're in bed laying down, I had this great, I want to say it was like a leg rest, but it was inflatable. I don't know if it was here when you girls were here for the event in January. Yeah. So something happened to that, it deflated, probably my cat, probably him. But that was super great too for like sitting and watching TV. It could just be elevating my feet, especially playing like volleyball and stuff like that. I was feeling like my feet were getting to me. Also, that was before I got this desk and this floor mat. So much improvement since then. But super beneficial. TED hose when you're standing for long hours, or there's even some compression socks you can wear. These are for, you know, my nurses, my factory workers, shift workers too. Bartenders, servers that are up all the time, constantly moving on their feet. This is really important. These TED toes basically apply compression to help with that return of blood at the bottom of your feet or legs. Traveling, if you're in car rides or you're on road trips, it's kind of hard to stop every hour. It's kind of hard to stop every 20 minutes. If you can, like every 2 hours, snag some time to get up and walk, go to a gas station, stretch your legs out, do some air squats, maybe even do some high knees. Lunges, I do lunges to kind of stretch out that front of my hip. And like I said, prioritize back strengthening exercises, doing some scapular retractions. That's the rows where we're bringing our shoulder blades closer together. Rear delt flies kind of help bring chest opens up too. Lat pull downs. Wrist cars and feet cars. This is essentially, I forget what the C stands for. I can't remember what it exactly stands for, but essentially what you're doing is taking your wrist through like entire movements, and you can do it without resistance. So I'm going to go from a completely flexed position and I'm going to try to turn without moving any other joint. I'm going to try to turn this in a full range that I can with my wrist. And you can also get your hands in play too. So I can go the opposite direction, and where you feel that jumpiness, I don't know if you can see it in my hand, but when I go slowly through this range, I get a little bit jumpy coming up this way. That little bit jumpy or insecure is where you need to focus a lot more. It's the same thing as being ticklish. A lot of times where you're ticklish is really some trauma or some injuries that you've had there, or maybe something happened that your body just feels like I need to get away from. Don't let something touch me here. There's a reason for that. Your body is much, much smarter than you are. So if there is some lagging or some inconsistency there, it's strength related or injury related. And you can do this with your ankles as well. James, who was on here, I've been working with him for quite a while for my movement, just being more efficient with movement and kind of getting rid of some aches and pains that I do have. He has me do ankle cars. I guess it's not feet cars, but ankle cars. And that's going through a whole range of motion with my foot. So what you do is you stabilize your foot. So if you put your foot off the edge of a bed or edge of a table, and you literally take it and use your toes to help guide through the direction as well. You go slowly through here, and then you could use your other hand for resistance. So like pushing through this range for resistance. And then opposite directions, to switch directions, you would use your foot against the other foot for resistance as well. And that's super beneficial, because how often are you even caring about your wrist? You don't think about it, but the whole time you're typing. We are so grip related. We're always gripping things, holding things. We're weightlifting, we're always gripping too. Pencils, you name it. We're always in this like flexed hand position. So the more we can like get our wrists and ankles to go in different motions throughout the day, it's just gonna be so much beneficial. You can get carpal tunnel here. You can also get carpal tunnel symptoms if you're too anteriorly rotated in your chest. Kind of all stem down here. So just essentially is thinking about how can we keep our body moving and ease our joints as we're just sitting here. And I would even say as far as like stretching out your fingers, typing, all that stuff just is tedious and it weighs on you. So stretching out your fingers as much as you can, holding them out, things like that. You can also do like prayer position and then dip it upwards. I do this sometimes too, or I'll straighten out my wrist and try to get all my fingers and pull them down too. A lot of different things you can do there. And just when I say that the body is self-correcting using its reflexes that we naturally have, such as when we're learning to walk, to learn our environment as a child, basically we're pressing reset back to our original strength. And original strength is exactly what this is here. It's literally strength does not have to be under barbells, under weights and things like that. It's literally just our strength to be a functional human being and be able to go day to day and do things without faulty posture or without injuries and things like that. So just wanted to finish up here and just kind of mention the 5 fundamental movement patterns for resetting our body back to like what it mentions in this book. And I'm not going to go into detail about this, but I just wanted to at least drop this here in case you were interested. But number 1, first and foremost, what is it? It's breathing. Breathing, head control, rolling and rocking, crawling. And crawling is something like those bear rows that you guys do. You can also implement that with crawling, so it's crossing your body. Gait patterns. When we walk, we're essentially having an arm swing in the opposite direction as our foot. We are constantly working across our midline. So this is essentially all these things add up to how a baby eventually learns to walk. And there are 3 rules to these patterns: is to always breathe properly. You have to move your head, because where our eyes go, our body follows, and we want our body to follow. And you must cross midline with limbs or contralateral movement. So if you're walking, you must be having your arm swing, working in opposite directions with your legs. That is a have to. That's one thing that we look for a lot in gait analysis, is that people have reciprocal arm swing. If they don't, where are they getting that balance from? Where are they substituting from? And then they mentioned just a 10-minute daily reset of doing these exercises here. And you can look these up to kind of see exactly what this is, but cross crawl, I'm going to assume is going to be like opposite arm and leg, synchronizing in a crawling position. And you can do this and make this hard. I did this a couple weeks ago with dumbbells. So I was like dragging a dumbbell as I was like bear crawling. That was pretty hard, but breathe with your diaphragm, do that for 2 minutes, do some neck nods. Maybe that's in a quadruped position where you're on your hands and knees and you're lifting your head up and down. Maybe you're looking over to your left shoulder and right, whatever that is. Segmental roll. This is actually really tough to do if you try to do this the right way. I can always, give you some more information on that, but you're trying to essentially roll your body as one unit. And then rocking, you can do this rocking on your hands and knees position too, or that position that I showed you from that video where that guy was on his hands and knees, and you can have your toes, pointing down, so they're in that plantar flex position, or you could be sitting on your toes where your ankles are dorsiflexed. Bear crawl, keep tongue on the roof of your mouth, and keep your head up while you are, or that says baby crawl, baby crawling. So your eyes follow your movement, head first, then the body, and breathe. The rest unfolds. Move like a child. That is my ending note on posture, and I bet you never thought it would go to where it did today, but it did. Does anybody have any questions or just some like, wow, didn't freaking know that? Anything at all?